Hey, I'm Plus Infinite, and today I'd like to introduce you to Superheavy Super Quants. Let's check it out. When the new Superheavy Samurai support came out in the TCG last year, I wanted to make a video just like this one. But before I could, they had already banned Scarecrow, a key card in these combos. Now that the cards are in Master Duel and Scarecrow's currently still unlimited, I'm excited to finally show you what this deck can do. I'm sure by now you're familiar with the Superheavy Samurai cards. With a variety of one-card combos, they can make some impressive boards with seemingly infinite interruptions. But why would you go through all that work just to lose to one copy of Dark Ruler No More, when you can instead use them to make the best boss monster in the game? I'm talking about the one and only, unaffected, search-stopping, non-target shuffling, Super Quantum Mech King Great Magnus. With the help of the Superheavy Samurai cards, we gain additional combos, increased consistency, and the ability to make a 7-material Magnus without ever having to worry about Nibiru or any other hand traps your opponent might draw off of Maxi ever again. You've already seen the deck profile on screen, so if you want any further explanation, you'll have to wait, since we're going to jump straight into some combos. I'll start with some flexible 3-card combos, but stick around and you'll see some new 2-card combos as well. This first combo uses Wakaushi or Bike, Alphen or White, and the Field Spell. So Wakaushi scale Benkei, Benkei search Soul Piercer, and here's where things get different. Soul Piercer effect equipped to Wakaushi and immediately link it into Scarecrow. This will preserve our normal summon for later. Now since we didn't see the Bike, we'll grab it here, otherwise go straight for Peacemaker. Scarecrow can ditch any card in your hand, so if you have White Layer, ditch that and grab Alphen. Now we use the Bike to search for Peacemaker. And you might be thinking, I know how this goes. Peacemaker equipped to Scarecrow, Tribute, and summon from the deck Superheavy Samurai Scales. Nope! We're going to use Wakaushi to sink into Borolo Savage Dragon for our summon number 5. Piercer Chainlink 1, Savage Chainlink 2, since we have Scarecrow in the grave, and Wakaushi Chainlink 3 to rescale itself. At this point, our opponent could use Nibiru as Chainlink 4, getting rid of the Savage since Savage can't negate until it has the token. But it won't make any difference because Piercer grabs Scales to our hand, and now we can pen summon the Wakaushi from earlier with Scales in our hand to grab back the Piercer and immediately sink into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon. Now had we made Excel earlier like most combos do, we would have lost it to Nibiru and with it our only line into Baron, but now we get to keep Baron for our next turn where we can use its effect to destroy. So Piercer grabs Soul Gaia Booster as our final search, and with Baron on the field and nothing left to fear, at long last we normal summon Alphen. Alphen tributes itself revealing white, red, and blue, but the result is always white and blue on field. If white or blue is summoned, red will summon back the other, and if red is summoned, target white, and it will be the same as if white had been summoned. Since we didn't get White's Grave effect, we'll go ahead and grab an Alphen to our hand for discard fodder. Since red was summoned, we'll grab the white back to our hand, where we can use its effect to send the red, summoning itself, triggering red, and summoning back the blue. Now we can activate the field spell we've been holding all along and use its effect to discard a card, target a Super Quant, and make it into a mech. And if I had used Scarecrow to discard white and grab Alphen back earlier in the combo, I would have one extra card to discard here instead of the Alphen, so it would have been the same. Soul Gaia Booster will equip to the Super Heavy and use its effect to summon itself so we can overlay for the final mech. Now that we've made 3 mechs, we can send the field spell targeting all 3 mechs on field to summon Super Quantum Mech King Great Magnus to our final zone and attach all of them as material. We pass our turn with a 7-mat Magnus, and even if we non-target shuffle, the opponent still can't search. Real quick, I'll show you the version of the combo with Bike, White, and Field Spell. It's pretty much the same. Bike searches for Wakaushi. Wakaushi does its thing. Scale the Benkei, Benkei search for Soul Piercer to equip, link for Scarecrow, and Soul Piercer will now go directly for Peacemaker. Scarecrow pitches the White Layer in our hand to trigger its Grave effect, grab Alphen from the deck, and everything proceeds as normal. Later in the combo, we use the Field Spell to pitch the other 2 cards in our hand, in this case Gearbox and Tunneler, to make the 2 mechs. Alright, it's time for me to show you the 2-card combo like I promised. The combo is the same, except minus the Field Spell, because we'll be getting it a different way later. I showed the other combo first because that one requires the minimum amount of super heavy cards in your deck. This one will take a few more spots in your deck and extra deck, but will trade it for substantial increases in consistency. So far the combo you've been seeing is exactly the same, except now we'll make Excel instead of Boroload, and you'll see why later. If your opponent chooses to use Nibiru, it won't make much difference, except you'll be down a negate. So Piercer will search Scales, and we'll make our Baron. Now we'll use our normal summon to summon Scales, and get its effect, bring back Piercer, and link into Ancient Gear Ballista. Ballista 1, Piercer 2 is preferable here. Piercer will grab Superheavy Samurai Stealthy, and Ballista will add Ancient Gear Box, which will allow us to add Infinitrack Tunneler. We'll special Stealthy and link into Cleafor Genius so that we can now pen summon using the Wakaushi from our extra deck and Gearbox and Tunneler to get Regulus with Cleafor's effect. Regulus summons itself by bringing back the Piercer, which will then get destroyed by Baron, searching Soul Gaia Booster, although in this case I have it, so I'll grab Bike. Now we'll link for Saryuja for 3 using Gearbox, Tunneler, and Cleafor Genius. Saryuja specials the Alphen from her hand and immediately links into Zealantis, who will come in handy in a second. Alphen tributes and normally reveals red, white, and blue, though since I have the second white in my hand, I'll use green in place of it. The result is still always white and blue, just disregard the fact that green has any kind of effect, and make sure that white sends green to summon itself that way. Red reviving blue here is annoying since we don't get the search, but that's okay because we're going to bypass that by banishing and resummoning everything. Zealantis will stay banished, but we'll bring back our 2 negates, both Baron and Regulus, who don't require anything in order to be able to negate, unlike Savage Dragon, which is why we didn't make it earlier. Blue gets its search for the field spell, and will activate it immediately. Before we discard any cards, though, we'll banish Tunneler and shuffle 5 Earth Machines from our grave back into our deck to draw 2, giving us discard fodder. We'll pitch 1 card to make the first mech, and then pitch the second card to make the second mech, in this case specifically in the extra monster zone, clearing us space to use Soul Gaia Booster to equip and summon itself. Then we'll overlay to make the final mech the rank 4. With 3 mechs on field, we'll send the field spell, target all 3, and make Magnus in our final zone with 7 materials and all his effects live. We'll pass with 2 Omni Negates, 2 cards in hand, and Magnus at full power. There's also a version of this combo that starts with either Wagon or Soul Piercer and either Alphen or White. You normal summon Wagon and grab Soul Piercer to equip, or you just normal summon Soul Piercer and link it into Scarecrow. Piercer grabs the Bike because we want it in the grave for later. Bike searches for Wakaushi. Scale the Wakaushi. Wakaushi effect. Scale the Benkei. Summon itself. Benkei effect. Grab Peacemaker, though I have it, so I'll grab Piercer. Scarecrow will pitch White in your hand to grab Alphen, or if you already have Alphen, then you'll pitch any other monster. Now we sink into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon here. Piercer 1, Excel 2, and Wakaushi 3 to rescale itself. Now since we're past 5 summons, technically we are vulnerable to Nibiru here. If your opponent uses Nibiru, it will clear the Scarecrow, which is a problem, but Piercer grabs Stealthy as a backup plan here, and we can use Peacemaker on Stealthy if we absolutely have to. Either way, Scale summons from the deck and brings back Piercer, but I'm going to pause the footage and explain a few caveats with the Wagon version of this combo. If you've already used Wagon's effect, you need to keep a level 4 Super Heavy on board or in your hand to overlay with Gaia Booster later and make the rank 4 mech. If you don't have the level 4 Super Heavy in your hand like I do here, then you should instead special the Stealthy and link into Ancient Gear Ballista that way, giving up on the Regulus play. If you started with Wagon and your opponent used Nibiru, so you had to use Stealthy to play around it, then you definitely need the level 4 Super Heavy in your hand to Pendulum Summon, otherwise this combo dies right here. One way or another, we'll make Ancient Gear Ballista with 2 Earth Machines. Ballista 1, Piercer 2 preferably. Piercer's going to go for Wagon, or if you've already used it, directly for Gaia Booster. Ballista adds Gearbox, and then Gearbox adds Tunneler, of course. And since we haven't used it, we'll special Stealthy and then link into Cleafor Genius to get a Regulus later. We'll pen summon Gearbox and Tunneler at minimum, and either Wagon if we haven't used it, or any other level 4 Super Heavy, and then link into Saryuja using Cleafor, Gearbox, and Tunneler. We'll special Regulus by bringing back the Piercer, and then use Saryuja's effect to special out the Alphen in our hand, linking it away into Zealantis as before. We'll tribute Alphen, revealing red, white, and blue like we were supposed to do in the last combo I showed. And the result is always white and blue, as I've mentioned. Red targets the white. In this case, I'm also activating blue to shuffle one of the whites back into the deck, but that's inconsequential. White will send the red. Red will summon back the blue. And now we can trigger Zealantis to banish everything, including itself, and keep itself banished. We'll summon back Baron, then Regulus, the blue, the white, and the Super Heavy monster. Blue will get its effect, and in this case we also trigger a Piercer search, although again it's inconsequential, it's just an extra card in our hand. Now with blue searching us the field spell, we'll activate it and start discarding cards. Because I have a few trash cards, I'll just go ahead and start doing that. Discard the second card and make the second mech. Again, we need to make sure one goes in the extra monster zone so that we can get Gaia Booster on field and overlay for the rank 4. Then we'll send the field spell, target all 3 mechs, and make Magnus with, again, 7 materials. I didn't even use Tunneler here, so I'll banish that and shuffle 5 Earth Machines back into the deck and see what we draw. So we'll pass our turn with 2 Omni Negates, a full power Magnus, and in this case 3 cards in our hand. So what happens if you don't draw Alphen or White in your opening hand? No worries, as long as you can access the super heavy cards with Bike, Wakaushi, Wagon, or Soul Piercer, you can get started with just 1 card. The combo proceeds normally up to the point where you would Pendulum Summon. All you need is to Pendulum Summon an extra monster out of your hand, and then we can link 4 for Saryuja, leaving a level 4 super heavy on the board. Saryuja will let us draw 4 and put 3 back. In this case, we drew Alphen. At that point in the combo, we have 25 cards remaining and 3 copies of Alphen, so we have a 42% chance of drawing it there. If we still haven't seen it, then Piercer searches 1 and Tunneler shuffles 2 cards back in the deck, putting us again at 25. With 3 copies of Alphen, that's a 23% chance to draw Alphen off of Tunneler. That may not seem like much, but the chance of at least one of those succeeding is a little over half. And if you want to bump those numbers, you could play Foolish Burial as a 4th copy of Alphen, but you would need to resolve Gaia Booster's effects first because it requires no spells in the grave. If you did that, that would bump the numbers to 52% and 30%, or a collective 66% chance, 2 out of 3. But if you're looking for a true 1-card Super Quant combo, then hit subscribe, because I think you'll really like one of the videos I've got coming up next. Alright, that's it for the combos. Now let me explain the deck profile to you. For this version, we've got 3 copies of Alphen. We want to see it as often as possible. It's necessary in pretty much every combo. 2 copies of Blue Layer and Red Layer are enough. You don't need more. And you could go down to 1, although I like to cycle it with Alphen. 2 copies of White Layer, you could go up to 3, although I tend to see it way more often than I'd like to with no way to get rid of it, so I keep it at 2. Green Layer, you only need it at 1, just as an extra name. It's unfortunately one of the weakest Super Quant cards. For the spells, we want to play as few as possible since the Super Heavies need no spells and traps in the grave to activate their effects, although the field spell can be shuffled back with Blue Layer after it gets sent to the grave after you make Magnus, so that's fine. And then Foolish Burial and E-Telly are just extra ways to get into the Super Quant engine and combos if you don't happen to see the Super Heavy cards. Foolish Burial has an extra copy of Alphen, of course, and E-Telly is just incredibly useful. I wish this card was at 3. You can use it with Alphen or White Layer or Foolish Burial or Field Spell, and you'll have a 2-card standard Super Quant combo even if you don't see any of the Super Heavy cards. Speaking of which, we have 3 Motorbike and 3 Wakaushi to our 2 copies of Benkei. This is pretty standard for Super Heavy stuff. Unfortunately, Konami did us dirty by making them all ultra rares, so say goodbye to your UR Dust. I apologize in advance. But this engine is pretty standard, like I said, in every variant of this deck, so if you want to play the Super Heavies in any way, you're going to need the 8 URs. We also need Soul Piercer, which recently got semi-limited. It doesn't really affect us too much. We only need 1 copy, really, to loop, and the second copy is just an extra way to get into the Super Heavy engine. As I showed, you could normal summon it. Same thing with Wagon here. It's just an extra way into the Super Heavy engine. You could play it down at 1, but I'm playing it at 2 to make up for the lost copy of Soul Piercer. Soul Gaia Booster is necessary for the combo, as is Peacemaker. And for the 2-card combo version of the deck, we need Stealthy, as well as Gearbox and Infinitrack Tunneler. Those are going to be necessary for the 2-card combo version of the deck. Another mandatory card is Superheavy Samurai Scales. You could play it at 1. I played it at 2 because sometimes you want to special summon it from the deck and it's already in your hand, so it makes it a little bit awkward, but 1 is fine. Let's see, we also have Regulus, which is our Omni Negate we search with Cleaford Genius. And then for non-engine, we have 4 more spots, so I played Ash, 3 copies of Ash to get rid of Max C, and Pankratops, which could honestly be anything. I just use it because it's a removal that doesn't conflict with Red Layer. If you wanted to play more non-engine, you could do that. I recommend cutting Pankratops, maybe a copy of Wagon, and then a copy of Scales. Then that would give you another 3 non-engine to play. You could also cut, let's see, maybe 1 or 2 copies of the Field Spell, and then you could get away with just the 1 Soul Piercer, and then that would give you 6 spots for a total of 9 non-engine. If you're looking for recommendations, I prefer not to play Maxi. That's just my preference. But you could play Droll Lock Bird. You could play Nibiru. Those are high impact cards. If you're playing only a few hand traps, you want them to be as high impact as possible. And you can't use things like Imperm because that would that would conflict with the super heavies. Let's take a look at the extra deck now. We've got Borreload's Savage Dragon. Although this card isn't actually necessary, we only really use it in the 3-card combo version. In most of the cases, we're actually going to go into Excel and then Baron, which are necessary cards. If you don't have them, I recommend picking them up. Tilting Entrainment's an interesting card. Since we have access to Scarecrow, we don't really need this card. But if we ever lose it, it may come in handy. We've got the blue, green, red, and white mechs, as well as Magnus and Zeus, all mandatory as far as I'm concerned. You could make an argument to drop the red mech since you're mostly just making blue, green, and white, but I wouldn't recommend doing so. We've got Scarecrow. I just play it at 1. You could play it at 2. I'm so grateful we have access to this card. I really wanted to show off this deck last year, so I'm glad I finally have the opportunity to do so. I didn't mention it in the combo, but you do actually need to summon to the zone that Scarecrow points to use its effects. So make sure that you have zones 1 and 3, or 1 or 3 clear, depending where you summon it. Cleefort Genius has a similar effect. You need to have zones 1 and 3 or 3 and 5 open in order to summon to get the search for the Regulus. Ancient Gear Ballista is just used to get into Gearbox, and to wrap things off, we've got Saryuja and Zelantis. That about does it for the deck profile. Thanks so much for watching to the end of the video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I've got so many videos planned, more than I have any time to create. I love making videos like this. I love this theme, and I love all the support and encouragement that I get. I make sure to read every comment, so if you have any questions or you want to see something specific, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll make sure to get back to you. Until next time, I'm Plus Infinite. Thanks so much for watching. Take cool. Stay cool, take care, and have a good rest of your day. Take cool. Stay cool. Damn it.
Hello, viewers. It's me, Super Quantum Fairy Alphin. You're watching Plus Infinite. Subscribe for more Super Quantum content. Ay, 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 ay.